The property disclosure statement is one of the forms commonly used in real estate transactions in BC. This form is where sellers disclose facts about the condition of the property so that buyers can make an informed decision when considering purchasing the property. In BC, there are different types of property disclosure statements that are used depending on the type of property being sold. Two common examples are the property disclosure statement for residential properties and the property disclosure statement for rural properties. While each of these documents covers similar kinds of disclosures, the different versions of the property disclosure statement contain different questions depending on the property type. The questions are typically asked based on the current condition of the property. Here are two examples of questions you will see. Are you aware of any additions or alterations made without a required permit and final inspection? For example, building, electrical, gas, etc. And, are you aware of any moisture and/or water problems in the walls, basement, or crawl space? So how does it work? The seller completes the property disclosure statement specific to the property type by reviewing each of the questions and initialing in the appropriate box to complete their response. All representations should be made with care so that they're not false or misleading. Sellers with limited knowledge about the property may choose to strike through or not complete the form. This might happen if the property is occupied by a tenant or if the seller is listing the property as executor of an estate or as power of attorney for the owner. Even if a seller chooses not to complete the form, if the seller is aware of a latent defect, it must be disclosed to a buyer. A latent defect is a defect that is not discoverable by a reasonable inspection or inquiry and makes the property unsafe or unfit for human habitation. It must be disclosed to a buyer. Realtors have a duty to disclose a material latent defect as defined under the Real Estate Services Act. While a latent defect is any defect that is not discoverable by a reasonable inspection or inquiry, and that makes the property unsafe or unfit for human habitation, a material latent defect as defined under the Act is broader. If a known material latent defect hasn't already been disclosed by the seller, realtors must disclose this to their clients and all other parties in the transaction prior to the seller accepting an offer. So, what happens if issues are identified in the property disclosure statement? In this case, a buyer should consider doing additional due diligence to ensure they're making an informed purchasing decision. While the property disclosure statement is not a mandatory form, by completing it, the seller may minimize the risk for potential claims after the sale of their property. Buyers may expect sellers to complete the property disclosure statement to help them understand the current condition of the home as known by the sellers. Based on this information, a buyer might decide whether they wish to make an offer on the home based on the known current condition and what additional due diligence they may want to consider. What happens if new information becomes available during the listing or sale of a property? For example, what if it turns out that renovations were done without a permit? The home needs a new roof, or there is a mold infestation. It's best practice for the seller to amend the property disclosure statement to reflect their current knowledge of the property. This helps the seller avoid making a misrepresentation if the property disclosure statement is incorporated into the contract of purchase and sale. If new information becomes available after an offer is accepted, the seller should seek legal advice to help them determine their disclosure requirements. At the end of the day, it's in the best interest of a buyer to ensure the property disclosure statement is completed, reviewed, and incorporated into an offer. It's also important to know that the property disclosure statement reminds buyers of the importance of making their own inspections and inquiries, since a seller's recollection or knowledge of their own property might be incomplete. When a seller is unsure whether aspects of the building or property need to be disclosed, they should seek independent legal advice. If you have any questions about the property disclosure statements or other forms used in real estate transactions in BC, ask your realtor. Realtors are here to help.